So hi, this is the module on plants. My name is Will. You've probably seen me before. So the goals for this module, we're going to talk a little bit about photosynthesis, and we're going to try to go one level deeper in our understanding of photosynthesis, which everyone has heard before, but we're going to try to go a little bit deeper. And the question we're going to ask to motivate this is, why do trees cool off hot cities? The second segment, we're going to ask about the most common biological chemicals in the world. And that's going to feed on to ask the final question, which is, why is the terrestrial world green? And understand the physiology behind these really common things that we see, like this forest. Why is it so green? So first question, why is it so much cooler in an urban green space compared to in the nearby city? So there's two answers that I get when we ask this question in flowering plants, the second year course, that are both wrong. The first one is plants create shade. That's incorrect. The second one is that plants change the albedo. And actually they change the albedo in the wrong direction. So as you can see in this picture of Central Park, the plants are darker colored than the nearby city, which is mostly white. And that should actually heat up the plants. But there's a much bigger physiological effect that drives the cooling. And we're going to get to that at the end of this module. So everyone already knows about photosynthesis. Energy comes from sunlight, carbon dioxide and water come from the air, and the plants turn that into sugars, which is what they use for food. They then use those sugars to create more plants, things that compose plants. So if you zoom way in on those leaves, you see where the photosynthesis actually occurs. So in those little green dots are chloroplasts, and inside those green dots is the most abundant protein on Earth. So this is a really important thing to memorize. Everyone knows about protein, why it's so important for animal nutrition, for catalyzing reactions in biology. And one of the things that it does is catalyze those reactions in biology. And the most abundant protein on Earth is inside those chloroplasts. And it looks kind of non-charismatically like this. And it's called ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. But it's so popular among plant biologists, and it's so important it actually gets a nickname, Rubisco. And I actually have more than 2 colleagues who have named pets Rubisco, because it's cute, it's short, and it's a good pet name. So that's the nickname for the most abundant protein on Earth. So what this protein really does is it's sitting there and it catalyzes reactions. So it's grabbing the CO2 out of the airspace inside the leaf and starting a whole series of really important reactions to turn that CO2 into sugars, which then serve as the food for the plant. So it's grabbing the CO2, sticking them together, and creating those sugars. So it's sort of a hungry sort of a protein. That's another way to think about, in terms of this cat analogy, is grabbing these sugars. And when it actually has a sugar in its active site, it can't grab another one. So it actually does get kind of full if it's eating too much CO2 molecules. And this actually has really important implications, because it can't just keep grabbing more and more CO2. So one of the implications is that you need lots of these Rubisco molecules all throughout the mesophyll, the inside of the leaf. And they just keep grabbing and grabbing and grabbing more and more CO2 molecules. And as they do, they get full. And so the CO2 concentration actually drops a little bit. It takes them a little while to find the next CO2 molecule. And so they need to keep bringing CO2 molecules into those internal gas spaces. And they keep needing more and more of these Rubisco molecules to keep grabbing more CO2. So one of the implications of this are that you need to keep the stomata open. So stomata are those little holes, basically, in the bottom of the leaf. And they have little guard cells on them. As you can see in this diagram, those guard cells can open and close as the plant wants. So as they open, that lets CO2 come in so the Rubisco molecules can keep grabbing them. And the inevitable consequence of opening those CO2 molecules up is that the plant loses water. So this is called transpiration. So water from the whole plant internal physiology system, including a product of, from all the way inside those leaf, are lost through the stomata back out into the atmosphere. So to get CO2 in, the plant has to let water out. And when you do this on a large scale, it's like when we sweat. That CO2 molecule goes from liquid to gas, and when it does, that evaporation cools the surrounding area. And because this is happening on such a large scale within a tree canopy or within a forest, that effect is actually cooling that whole area. So it's the plant opening their stomata to get CO2 in, lets the water out, and that evaporative cooling is what drives those green spaces to be cooler than the surrounding cities.